Hi, and welcome to the Right to Remain Silent podcast. I'm Jim Weber, your host and guide through actual accounts of intriguing and fascinating true crime stories as told by the law enforcement professional that experienced the event. The Right to Remain Silent podcast makes no exaggeration of fact, doesn't glamorize details, or sensationalize reality. The format here is basic. Real stories from real cops. Lastly, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share. Doing this will help me continue to provide you, the listener, with captivating and relevant true crime stories. Now, let's listen in on today's episode. Hi, and welcome to the Right to Remain Silent podcast. Today we have a special episode with guests Jared Murphey and Brian Sizemore. And we're going to talk about an incredibly important topic that I think more people should be aware of, especially the law enforcement community, and what can be done to help individuals that are possibly traveling down the path to stress, to PTSD, or maybe even considering suicide. We're going to talk about some heavy topics today, and I know this conversation is going to help anyone and everyone that listens to it. So let me go ahead and introduce my guest. First is Brian Sizemore. He is the father of Lucas Sizemore. We also have Jared Murphey, who is a special agent with the Department of Homeland Security Investigations. Welcome to you both. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, Jim.
Good morning, Jim.
Morning, absolutely. So we're gonna get into this here, and we're gonna roll up the sleeves, and we're just gonna start talking about it. So let me start with you, Brian. How about could you just tell us who you are and tell us about your son, and then we'll walk into talking about the foundation that you started.
Okay. Again, my name's Brian Sizemore. I'm an employee of AT&T. Been there 26 years now. Love my job. Work for great people, great department, great company. Just a normal American family. My wife and I had two sons, Lucas and Evan. Modest household here south of Detroit. She's a school teacher. So we've been fortunate to have good jobs and raise good kids and not have really any problems or anything. God has blessed us. Lucas was a everyday American kid, grew up in a subdivision, playing with the neighbors, went to school, never had no problems, never had issues with anybody, graduated high school, went to Eastern Michigan University, got his degree there. And while he was going to Eastern Michigan, he was interning with HSI in Detroit. That's how he met Jared. I would say somewhere when he was going to Eastern Michigan before the internship, he showed some interest in law enforcement. His uncle, Paul Labadie, retired from HSI right around the time he was at Eastern Michigan. So his uncle helped him with getting an internship, to see if this is what he would like. Do you like this career choice? And he did. You can, you have kids, you can tell their enthusiasm, that they're happy, they enjoy going to work, or, when he was doing the internship, he enjoyed that. He really enjoyed it. So his mother and I knew that that was going to be his career choice. Now, where that was the unknown factor. We didn't know where he would end up. I think he wanted to stay federal. But at the time, from what he told us, the only federal agency that would hire him with no law enforcement experience was the Border Patrol. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he was told, and he did not want to do that. Nothing against that, but he knew, being a new guy, he would be on the border somewhere, and it just wasn't for him.
Right.
So a lot of law enforcement in our family could have got him a job anywhere local here, pretty much, that he wanted. A lot of small towns around here, but he didn't want to do that. He wanted to do. It's exciting is the wrong word, but that's the stuff that he wanted to do. He wanted opportunities to be on a motorcycle. He wanted opportunities to be in a special response team. He wanted the opportunities that you don't have being on a local police force with 20 officers on it. So
Sure.
he started applying, and Atlanta had a big hiring event. He applied. They did their initial vetting. He went down there for some testing and stuff. He was down there probably 3 or 4 days. They put him up in a hotel, and they offered him a job. So he went to the academy. He was, that whole process took about a year. While they're going through the academy, the recruits are given a job, a specific job within the department, administrative type stuff to earn their keep, so to speak. Lucas got a gravy. That's probably a wrong choice of words too, but he got a gravy assignment and was posted in the chief's office. So
Wow.
that's how, and he just sat at a desk and answered phones and ran errands and stuff like that. But that's how he became close with Chief Shearbaum in Atlanta. So Chief Shearbaum, when he passed away, Chief Shearbaum actually knew him, among
Hmm.
all the thousands of recruits that come through there. He worked, or at least saw day to day, Lucas's face behind that desk. So it was really hard on that whole department as well.
I can imagine. How about let me pause you and ask Jared, when, like Brian mentioned, you became acquainted with Lucas. Can you tell us about that? Like how your interaction started?
Yeah, so I met Lucas in the summer of 21, I believe it was. This was kind of during the post-COVID era. So it was a time when there was a little bit less interaction in the office than normal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was working on, he was assigned to our global trade investigations group, which handles things like counterproliferation, various national security issues. And at the time, we were adapting some of our capability to address Paycheck Protection Program fraud, which was really rampant here in Southeast Michigan. And so he was assigned to assist on those investigations. Super enthusiastic, great attitude, was well liked by the agents. He was eager and had initiative, and you could tell that he had a desire to be an agent. And I have a soft spot for that because that's how I began my law enforcement career in the summer of 1998 as an intern. Similar with green desire to be an agent, and eager to get into the academy and to start off a career. So I've always kind of had a soft spot for for interns, and I can appreciate what it was like for him because my first duty station was a long way from home as well. And, you deal with kind of being on your own, and then you merge that with, various law enforcement stresses. I think this is a really unique line of work, particularly because of the stresses. And when I talk about stress, I mean both the acute stress, which, are those urgent emergency type situations when you have to make a decision with incomplete information in a split second, but also the chronic type of stress as well, which can be affected by night shift work, irregular sleep patterns, long hours, being away from family. And Jim, from your line of work, from your career, that you miss a lot of birthdays, you miss a lot of kids' sports events, you miss some holidays, there's nights and weekends when you're out, and the job demands a lot of you. And that's true, especially, I think, of uniform law enforcement. So, I believe very strongly that had things turned out differently, Luke would have been working for HSI, would have been a special agent, and, would have progressed his law enforcement career.
Sounds like an incredibly focused individual that knew what he wanted to do and started pursuing that. That's great. So let's shift back to you, Brian, and just kind of continue on. He's working at Atlanta PD.
Mm-hmm.
He's enjoying his job. It sounds like you are a great family, that parents that support him, and a positive work environment. Just continue on, and just tell us more here.
So a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people are aware that, in the story I heard was years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, a recruit was found sleeping in their car. And the Atlanta Police Department had to look at themselves and figure out, okay, why do we have recruits sleeping in their car? And number one, the traffic is horrible. They do the best they can, but Atlanta's a big city.
Sure.
The other issue is that, like most major cities, to avoid the traffic, you want to live in the city. Well, the prices are astronomical. So you either paid that price or you lived outside the city. So they, with the help of local corporations and the Atlanta Police Foundation, they built an apartment building. It's called Unity Place. They took some I want to say the property was vacant. In any case, they built this 4 or 5 story, I think it's 4-story apartments. And Lucas was fortunate to get one of those. I think he was the second. Class 277 was the second class, I think, that had the ability to lease one of those apartments. And I want to say it was cheap. It was like $300 a month. The utilities were included. He had a roommate. They each had their own bedroom and bathroom that locked. They had a small living room, a full kitchen, washer and dryer in the apartment, and it was all brand new, all hardwood floors. It was nice, small but very nice for what they needed. It was nice, and so he enjoyed that, but also had the foresight to figure out that once he was done with the academy and once he graduated, he's going to have to find an apartment or somewhere to live, because there's a waiting list for that place. It's so successful. I think they're trying to build another one. So he used his off time to try to locate a place. And, while he was finishing the academy, I don't know if other states do it like the state of Georgia does. So he was actually sworn in February. You have to be a sworn police officer in the state of Georgia to be on the road in a police car and carry a firearm and a taser and all the equipment. So he was actually done with the academy, was doing his field training, but in between there, you have to be sworn in. So he was sworn in, started his field training, did that until May, and then his graduation was in May, the official formal graduation ceremony.
And what year was that?
That was 2023.
Okay.
Yep. So he was a rookie police officer.
Sure. All right. Sounds like things are going good for him. He's
Yep.
completed the academy. He's got a good assignment. He's got a good living situation and
Yeah.
looking for to improve his living situation and move on. So,
Yeah.
continue, walk us on here.
He he uh,
How's it unfolding for him?
he everything was going according to plan. I mean, he had a active social life. He found an apartment. He had a girlfriend, and they had become engaged. So his life was like he was on this path, and everything seemed fine on the surface. He loved his job. He was getting. Jared had mentioned the sleep patterns and stuff. He chose a he chose a they don't call them precincts in Atlanta. They call them zones. He chose a zone that was busy. Um, he didn't he didn't want to be like a traffic officer or anything like that. He wanted to do police work. So he chose a
Hmm.
zone that was busy. He chose they call it the evening watch, which was like uh, 3 o'clock in the afternoon to like 2 o'clock in the morning. Um, so at that time of day, it's active, and ironically, our he our shifts like overlapped. So he would be getting off at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I usually get up about 3:30 to go to work. So I tried to help him with the sleep patterns, and I would tell him, say, look, you gotta treat it like you're working days. If you got to be at work at 3 p.m., then you wake up at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon like it's the morning. Start your shift, come home, stay awake a few 4 hours, 5 hours, and then go to bed like you would at night, like you were
Right.
working a day shift. So he was definitely getting used to that because he had never had to work a straight night shift like that constantly. So,
That can really affect an
yep.
individual.
So he was getting used
Absolutely.
to it. He was getting used to it. You could tell, when I talked to him, I could tell that he wasn't tired anymore. He was definitely getting used to it. He came home. I can't remember when it was he came home. He came home, and we rented a U-Haul truck, and they got some furniture, a little bit of furniture from everybody, and he bought some stuff, and they got an apartment, nice little his one bedroom and like an office, nice gated apartment complex. Moved him in. He bought himself a car. Bought a car from the Ford dealership up here in Michigan, and everything was going fine.
He's doing what a young man does, what a young adult
Yes,
does. He's
yes.
proceeding on in life. While you're interacting with him during these time frames, are you seeing anything, any
And that
signs or indications?
Jim, that haunts me. Because no, talk to that kid every day. Never. If you've been on the website, you've seen that picture of him in his uniform.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way he was all the time.
Hmm.
Big smile, always in a good mood, and nobody, no, like he's close with his cousins, he's close with his brother, he's close to me, he's close to his mom. Nobody saw this coming. Nobody got any indication that there was anything wrong.
Wow. Wow. All right. So he's moved into his new place and he's still doing good at work and,
Mm-hmm.
consistent communication with siblings, family members, with you and friends. So what happens? Where does he go from here? One work wise, personal life wise, how does he keep moving along?
Everything was moving along fine. I mean, like I said, we never had any indication that there was anything bothering him. There was nothing negatively going on at work. We were not aware of anything negatively going on with any of his friends or his fiance. If there was, he never mentioned it.
Okay.
After he passed, um, eventually the police department gave me back his phone and his iPad, and he had some notebooks and stuff. There was nothing in any of that. His laptop, his emails, text. I mean, like you would, I'm sure the detectives went through all of that when they took all that stuff, but we went through it too. When we got it all back, we went through all of that. We had questions. Did we miss something? Was something bothering him? And there's absolutely nothing there.
But sometimes no matter what you do individually or how good your communication is with an individual, you can't always tell what's going
Right.
on in their mind and their life. So,
Right.
I would interject, don't beat yourself up over that whatsoever. So what happens? How long is he at the police department before the incident occurs? Before you're
He
notified?
Well, he graduated in May, beginning of May 2023. He passed away 445 days ago. So that he passed away on January 9th, 2024. It was the day after Michigan's football team won the national football championship, the NCAA championship. Him, and one of his best friends lived in the same apartment complex, was also an Atlanta police officer. They walked to this little local hamburger and beer place, had dinner, watched some of the game, came home, watched the rest of the game, and then Mason, who is his friend's, and he's close to us now as well, awoke to pounding on the door because APD was there trying to wake him up in his apartment because Luke had already he had passed. By all estimates, about 4:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, he went into his bathroom and got in the shower. And while he was in the shower, he put a 9mm in his mouth and shot himself. I was at that time of day, I was probably either on my way to work or getting ready to leave for work. Got to work, and my routine is I walk in, I set my stuff down on this desk, and I walk out. I work for AT&T in logistics, so I walked out into the warehouse portion of the building, and while I was back there, a coworker grabbed my phone and came running to me with my phone because Evan, my younger son, was blowing up my phone. Now, at the time, Evan was going to school. He was enrolled in university, and he played college football. So the fact that he was calling me at, early in the morning, just after 5 a.m. wasn't that unusual because they started practice at 6. They start very early in the morning so they could be done with their practices and go to class. So I'm thinking like, okay, something's wrong with his car, something, he needs something, no big deal. So I called him back, and apparently I want to say the police department tried to call my wife. She was probably getting ready, maybe in the shower, couldn't get through to him. Forgive me, I don't remember that they tried to call me. So they must have had Evan as a contact. They called him. So he called me. I called him back, and I could tell you have children, when, I don't care if they're 2 or 22, when you hear their voice, if something's wrong, you just hear it. And he said, Dad, he said, you got to sit down. And I said, what's going on? I said, just tell me. He said, Dad, he said, you got to sit down. I said, Evan, just fucking tell me. And he said, Luke's dead. And I said, what? And now I've never asked Evan. I said, I don't know if this next part is what he actually said or what I wanted to hear. But what my brain processed was that he accidentally shot himself. Later we found out that that wasn't true. So now I'm at work. I live about a half hour away, 35 minutes away. I looked at my coworker. We've worked together long enough. She knew something bad had happened. I said, I got to go tell the boss I'll call her as soon as I get settled, or as soon as I can. So now I'm driving home and doing all the things that you're not supposed to do while you're driving. I'm trying to find flights on my phone. I called my wife. She was standing in the kitchen. She was in the kitchen, I believe. Just totally incoherent. Couldn't understand her. Just totally like a mess. Driving home, like I said, trying to find a flight, I wasn't calling family members or anything yet, because I still didn't have any kind of confirmation. I did call Evan back, told him, I don't care what you're doing, drop everything you're doing and get home. So he's about 45 minutes from home. He comes home. And ironically enough, I was supposed to go out of town for work. So I had a bag packed and was waiting for last minute details to get worked out with AT&T so I could go on this little road trip for them. I walked in the house. Marie is, I'm guessing, standing in the same place in the kitchen where she was when I talked to her. Same condition, totally incoherent. It was just awful. And I told her, I said, I looked for a flight. I can't get a flight until like noon. This is just before 6 a.m. I said, I'll be more than halfway there. I said, I'm leaving right now. I said, I'm getting in my truck and I'm driving to Atlanta right now. And she said her elderly mother lives with us. But that being set aside, someone could have came and watched her, but she made it known that, she said, there's no way I can go down there to get him, to see him like that. She can't do it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going. I'm not waiting. I'm going down there. So I grabbed my bag, grabbed what money I had here. So I had a little bit of cash. And by 6:30, I was probably on the road to Atlanta. Excuse me. So, and I mentioned a lot of what I'm telling you, I tell to the recruits, I tell to the high school students that I speak to. I've even did a conference with Jared and HSI in Columbus, and I tell them kind of the same story. I didn't know who to contact down there. I knew his friends, I knew their names, but I didn't have any of their numbers. So I couldn't call to confirm anything. So it just popped in my head to call his precinct. So I called the desk sergeant, and I'm assuming I don't know what their technology is there, but I'm assuming my caller ID popped up, because the young lady, and I never did get her name, she's like, Sizemore, are you okay? We're getting these reports and we don't know what's going on. And I said, ma'am, my name is Brian Sizemore. I'm Lucas's dad. I said, I'm getting the same reports. I said, I am on my way to Atlanta right now. And she said, okay, Mr. Sizemore, when Major Clay is on his way to the scene, I'll make sure he's got your number and he'll call you back. So he did call me. He had not been to the scene yet. So as soon as we have some information, I will call you.
This episode of the Right to Remain Silent podcast is brought to you by Streetwise 360 Law Enforcement Consulting, your go-to resource for expert law enforcement training. Whether it's conducting successful criminal investigations, performing undercover work, mastering interviews, conducting surveillance, utilizing confidential informants, or case strategy, Streetwise 360 gives officers the real-world skills they need for success. Learn more at streetwise-360.com. because knowledge is power in the field. Now back to the show.
So I'm still heading south. About maybe 40 minutes go by. Chief Shearbaum calls me, and he's the one that confirmed that Lucas had passed. And he said that he was, totally apologetic, totally professional, and he didn't give me any details. I didn't really ask for any details yet, but he did confirm that Lucas had passed. He had made it a point. He said, I want to go to Zone 4's roll call because I'm sure some of them had heard or were hearing rumors, and he wanted to be there for their morning roll call to tell them. So he did that. And then as the day progressed, I probably got it. He probably called me a dozen times. I wasn't, at the time, I wasn't aware that driving under that type of condition is bad as drunk driving or being overly tired or any kind of condition like that. And honestly, Jim, I can tell you that there were times, like if you had called me and asked me where I was, I couldn't have told you. I just knew I was on southbound I-75. I couldn't have told you. There was times I couldn't have even told you what state I was in. I was just driving by myself. Every thought, everything that you can imagine going through my head. And then when I finally did arrive in Atlanta, his training officer and his best friend met me at a McDonald's in Marietta. Pulled off. His best friend took my truck, drove my truck. They didn't want me driving anymore. And then the training officer and another patrolman bracketed us and took us right into a hotel downtown Atlanta. The police foundation was generous and put me up in a hotel there for the 3 or 4 days I was there. And then the whole investigative process started. They took me upstairs into a conference room, and I was never law enforcement, but I totally understood they had to ask me the questions that they had to ask me. I understood, they, like we talked about, did I know anything? Did I hear anything? Were there problems? Did I see any notes? Was he upset? And just like I told you earlier, we weren't aware of any of that.
Unbelievable. Let me pause there and just say, I'm so sorry that you and your family had to endure this. And I would also commend the supervision at Atlanta Police Department for the way they professionally and sympathetically handled this situation. I can't imagine, so I'm not even going to comment any further on that. So this tragic event happens. You're in Atlanta for, like you said, 3 or 4 days. What do you do? What do you do? How, at what point do you leave, and what happens after that?
So when the officers, took my truck and escorted me to that hotel in Atlanta, when I walked into the lobby, Chief Shearbaum was there. His detail was there. A couple of detectives, some sergeants, 1 or 2 of the chaplains, members, administrative member of the honor guard, I believe, was there. There was every bit of a dozen, if not more. Major Clay was there. And we went into this conference room. I answered their questions. I had a few questions, like I knew they were going to have to take his phone and his iPad and that stuff. And they're like, you'll get all that back. And then I asked who had his badge because I wanted it. And this whole time, Chief Shearbaum sitting right next to me. And he was very comforting. And he said, don't worry about any of that. You'll get every bit of that. And then the chaplain, I think it was Chaplain House that was there, helped me with some funeral home selections, because it's almost like we had to plan 2 services, because they have to prep him in Atlanta and then arrange for air transport to bring him back up to Detroit. So that I had to make phone calls for that. And then while we were sitting there, I was done asking questions, at least questions that I had. I was constantly scribbling notes and stuff because I knew there was a ton of stuff I was going to have to do. But I asked Chief Shearbaum right there in that meeting. I asked Chief Shearbaum to step out in the hallway, and if you ever talk to him, he'll confirm this for you. Right then, I told him, I said, the family wants to start this foundation. Excuse me.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Take all the time that you need.
So we finished our meeting and stuff, and I went up to my room, and my sister-in-law is an attorney, and I called her. Her name's Louise. I said, Louise, I want to start this foundation. We're gonna start this foundation in Lucas's honor. Don't know what we want to name it yet. I don't know any of the details, but get the paperwork started. So when I come home, in a few days, whenever I get home, we can finalize it and sign it and send it into the state of Michigan. And we did it that fast. It was done within a week, at least the paperwork and submitting the paperwork.
That's incredible. That's impressive.
So it's when you got to drive 11 hours under, for the reason that I had to, like, lots of things are going through your mind. And that was one of them. I don't want families or parents to have to go through this. And to accomplish that, you have to help these heroes, these young men and women that are doing this job. Whatever it takes to help them, I'm willing to do.
Right. Sometimes out of horrific tragedies like this, great things like your foundation are born. And that is a noble cause for on you and your family to, one, create that, two, to move forward, and three, for individuals like Jared to get involved and support and promote that. That is just as important.
He's been a blessing.
Absolutely.
The small local stuff we're really good at, but I'll be honest with you, Jim, when he approached me to do this relay, it seemed so daunting at the time. I didn't want to say no, so I said, yeah, let's do it. But I didn't think it was going to work. I didn't think we could pull it off. And then just 1 week went by, then 2 weeks went by, then a month went by, and then we just started knocking the pins down. We got this finished, we got this finished, now we got this done. And now, like he said the other day, now we can see it. We can see this is really going to happen.
I was so excited when Jared contacted me and let me know about this foundation and let me know about this event that's coming up in September. And again, I can't say enough. That is such a tremendous cause. It will help so many people. Is there anything, Jared, for you to interject at this point? Do you want to discuss the foundation at all, or should we continue on with Brian's conversation? Or you go ahead.
I think I might want to offer something. I actually haven't even shared this with Brian yet, but I think it just kind of completes the story, and it also highlights the fraternal nature of law enforcement, the kind of the brotherhood that exists even among people that don't even know one another. So a colleague of mine, a former retired agent, called me on the Sunday after Lucas had died, and he had said, hey, Lucas's uncle, Paul, his nephew had died. And at the time I didn't know who they were talking about. They said, hey, he's a former Atlanta police officer. The family resides in the Detroit area. Can you guys organize a police escort from when Lucas lands in Detroit? And when he said Lucas, I said, wait a minute. Is this Lucas Sizemore? And he said, yes. So the flight came from Atlanta late on a Sunday night. I think it was January 14th of 24, so 14 months or so ago. And so we jumped into action, coordinated with a few police agencies, and we organized a police escort from the moment that Lucas's casket was brought down from the plane, put into a mortuary vehicle, and then it was brought with honors all the way to the funeral home, which I think was in Woodhaven. I don't quite remember, but these are people that didn't know Lucas,
Right.
but yet, out of respect for the profession and the brotherhood, you've got the thin blue line that brought him home.
Right. Right. And I think people, just the general public, they may not be aware of that bond that you're mentioning there. And I think it's important for everybody to know that, this is a serious job, and there is such a strong bond and network between the brothers and sisters of law enforcement. And that speaks volumes right there. That is a tremendous example of how that unfolds. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, because I'm sure on that website somewhere is the video of, because his funeral was in pieces. We had to take him from the medical examiner in Atlanta out to a funeral home, and then they had to take him from the funeral home to the airport. So, and then when they got him back to Detroit, they had to take him from Detroit Metro Airport, to the funeral home in Woodhaven, and then we had him cremated. So we weren't quite sure what we wanted to do with his remains. So the funeral home held on to his remains for us until we figured out where we were going to put him. And then once we did, we had a police escort out to the cemetery. I mean, and that it reminds me of his graduation, and Chief Shearbaum said some words, and he mentioned that he was speaking to the parents and to the families, and he said to us, don't you forget that excuse me.
Yeah.
That we are now a part of that blue family.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
As a parent, when you're sitting there, you really don't think much about that, or you kind of even don't believe it until something bad happens. And then, like Jared said, people that didn't even know or know us, we were getting condolences and prayers sent to us from all over the country, really. His funeral service was the largest that our funeral home has seen in 20 years. It was touching, and it's hard to not get emotional about it.
Oh, rightfully so. And again, another tremendous example of law enforcement and the solidarity. Well, let's talk about the Lucas Foundation. Let's talk about this foundation that you created, and let's talk about this upcoming event. And I don't know if Jared, if you want to do this, or if Brian, you'd like to, but let's talk about that and tell people so they know.
I think it's best for Brian to talk about the foundation and what the foundation does in general, and then I'm happy to share about the Bring Them Home run.
All right. Please do, Brian.
Okay, so we when we started the foundation, we knew that we wanted to focus on somehow getting the message out of. Let me backpedal. I started after he passed. I started, I'm a pit bull with a bone, so I started researching, like, and it really started with me in Atlanta, because I had found out that this had just happened in Atlanta, and there was an attempt in Atlanta. And so I thought, as a dad, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why don't you hear about this? Or why didn't I know about this? So I start doing the research. I'm sure I went on to a lot of the same sites that Jared's going to reference. And I didn't realize how big a problem it is. And then I changed my focus changed from, okay, we know it's a problem. Why? It almost seems like nobody was doing anything, or nobody was saying anything. So we started focusing on that. Like, I'm not shy to get emotional. I'm not shy about any of that. So I will get on any podcast or any kind of news outlet, and I get in front of them recruits, I get in front of them high school kids, and I'm the same way. If this is what's got to happen for people to wake up and help us shine a light, and when the light comes, help will come, and funds will come, and programs will come, and that's what we're working towards. We want to get the awareness out there, so companies and private citizens and a lot of the larger departments and agencies have programs to help with officers' mental health. Some of the smaller ones don't, and we want to help change that. We want to I would like at some point to, I really wish I could run into a retired law enforcement professional that has become a mental health professional and develop mental health programs specifically geared towards law enforcement, and then try to implement those across the country. And if I couldn't find that type of professional, then, I want to be able to gather as much information from every law enforcement group there is, every age group, every rank, every region of the country, every job that you might do within your department and your agency, and get this big pool of info and try to figure out from you all how to help you guys. Because I don't think talking to I hate to say it like this, just a regular mental health professional, I don't, in my heart, don't believe that you guys are comfortable with that. If you were speaking to another law enforcement professional, maybe you would open up some more. If you're speaking to a mental health professional that has went through some kind of training specifically geared to help law enforcement, maybe you folks would open up some.
I think that's a great concept. I think that's a tremendous concept, and maybe we can make that a goal to pursue that.
Will it work? I don't know, but we got to try something. We got to start with something.
Absolutely.
APD's has a mental health professional. Her name is Dr. Carla Moore, and I've spoke to her a few times. She has spoke with me at the police academy, and she is wonderful. She is really working hand in hand with the Atlanta Police Department. I know their new public safety training center has a building dedicated to officer wellness, and I haven't been inside the building, but they tell me that there is dedicated space for their mental health. So I'm sure I'm going to be down there in the next month or so. So I'm excited to check that out.
Outstanding. How about the upcoming in the fall? How about the upcoming Bring Them Home 1,000-mile relay? Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let Jared speak about the relay. He's a whole lot better with the details than I am.
Sure.
Brian, before we dive into the run and what's behind it, I kind of want to set the stage, because so far we've been hearing Brian's story and the Sizemore family story, but there are thousands of families that are just like the Sizemores. And the general public does not know how prolific suicide is in the law enforcement community. It's the number one cause of death in the law enforcement community. It exceeds all other causes of death, line of duty deaths. It's 70% of line of duty deaths. Sorry, 70% of deaths between 2016 and 2022 were suicide. Only 30% were line of duty deaths. Now that's taking out law enforcement accidents, but still, when you add in, vehicular accidents and things like that, suicide is still well over half of all law enforcement deaths. So this is not something that only affects the Sizemores. It is a nationwide crisis in law enforcement. You've seen the story where just in the last 6 weeks, there are 4 officers from a sheriff's department in Texas all committed suicide. We had an officer just last week here in the greater Detroit area that committed suicide. It happens all the time. And I think I'm not an expert in this. I'm just somebody that supports law enforcement and believes in our mission and believes in sustaining it. And I think that there are 3 big factors behind that. First, there are sort of societal factors. We are, I think, exiting an era when law enforcement has been vilified in a similar way that soldiers were when they returned from Vietnam, where the respect for law enforcement has been low. There's a misconception, a gross misconception in the public that law enforcement are people that act without integrity. And that is absolutely overwhelmingly not the case.
Right.
There are workplace factors that we had discussed, the acute and the chronic stresses. Law enforcement is the only line of work that I can think of where a poor decision based on insufficient information with not enough time to make it can result in not only the loss of your job, but could also land you up in jail. And there's just not enough appreciation amongst the public for the demands of this work. And then the third thing I want to mention is sort of the cultural factors within law enforcement that since the beginning have stigmatized discussing mental health. And one of Brian's big goals is to make discussing mental health issues as common as downloading your body worn camera footage, or as common as getting your oil changed on your police vehicle. It needs to be more common. So we need to do something extreme to draw attention to this, not only to the giant issue of suicide in law enforcement, but how to fix it. And so we came up with the idea of doing a 1,000-mile law enforcement relay run that starts where Luke started his law enforcement career down in Atlanta. It's going to start on September 23rd or 24th. It's going to run 7 days, night and day, through Georgia, through Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and it's going to end up here in Michigan on September 30th. September is Suicide Prevention Month. There's going to be a lot of meaning behind this. We're trying to certainly raise funds for the foundation so that the foundation can serve law enforcement better, especially law enforcement personnel that are struggling with mental health issues. But at a bigger level, to raise awareness about this issue and to make it okay to talk about. So the vast majority of transition points where one group of runners pass the baton to the next are going to happen at police stations, sheriff's offices, state police offices, federal law enforcement offices, where we're going to kind of force the conversation, where leaders are going to have the opportunity to talk to their personnel about this, to talk to the media about this. One of our objectives is to get a congressional resolution to raise awareness, where we have state and federal Congress people that can come out and get acclimatized to this issue and to get some better resources in place for it. These are America's heroes.
Absolutely. You and I were talking before today's episode. I've been in law enforcement 30 years, and I didn't realize that suicide was the highest cause of death in law enforcement. Did I see it? Yeah, I saw it occur throughout my career, but I didn't realize the severity of this. And this is a very important topic. And I think what you guys are doing is so crucial and so important to helping not only officers and agents and investigators and detectives, but their family members as well. This is an incredible cause, and I look forward to working with you guys in the future as this
And we're
event
going to name
approaches.
every leg of the run in honor of the law enforcement officer who died as a result of suicide. And we're going to connect, we're going to tie local law enforcement officers to that. So, for example, just last week, we reached out to Marietta Police Department in Georgia, and they said, hey, we'd love to participate. We recently lost an officer. So that officer, that leg will be in honor of that officer. In police work, we see and hear things that the regular public does not. And we're exposed to a lot of secondary trauma. In my line of work, that generally stems from child exploitation investigations and human trafficking investigations, where agents are subjected to other people's trauma, but in a way that you can't get that out of your head. You
It
can't
never goes away.
you can't unsee and unhear horrible things, and that affects a person. Within our organization, we really emphasize peer support and employee assistance. Law enforcement brothers and sisters helping one another. Jim, I encourage you, if you can get him on, to ask General James Mukuyama to come onto your podcast. He's a fantastic human being. He's been on Jocko's podcast. He came down and talked to us at one of our one of our musters where we discuss, secondary trauma. And he talks about moral injury, where, you're raised a certain way by your family. You have a certain moral code. And when you go into combat, and by extension into police work as well, you're exposed to things that go against that moral code. And he's developed kind of a system to cope with seeing and doing things and hearing things that go against your moral code. And his thinking and his prescription is kind of my approach to this run. We need to do something dramatic to expose, to raise awareness about it. Doing hard things is a good way of talking about hard things too. The LUCAS Foundation recently did a polar plunge in 34-degree water, February 22nd. And that's kind of the thought behind that as well. By doing hard things, it's cathartic.
Right. Doing hard things oftentimes results in great results. So yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you guys would like to circle back and touch on about anything we discussed today? Or are you comfortable that we covered everything?
Yeah, I think so far we've probably covered everything. I know if you go to lucascrusade.org is the site for the relay. Things are being built, and I'm sure next week you're going to see a lot of things start to get added. The registration process for runners should be up there soon. The sponsorship information and sponsorship levels and ways for you to donate and volunteer and help, that should be up there soon. I'm talking within days. So
Excellent.
a lot of good things coming.
Good. I look forward to it. first and foremost, I commend you, Brian, for turning tragedy into triumph here. I commend Jared for his hard work and efforts to make this happen. And, like we all mentioned here earlier, I would commend Major Clay, Chief Shearbaum, the chaplain that you mentioned, the officers of Atlanta PD. Kudos to them for the support and the way they handled it as well. And I appreciate and respect both of you gentlemen for everything that you're doing for this cause. And I look forward to what's coming up in the future with you guys that you referenced. So I appreciate you. I thank you for what you're doing. I support everything you do here. So again, thank you guys.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep,
Thanks, Jim.
absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Thank you. The Right to Remain Silent podcast is brought to you by Streetwise 360 Studios. I would like to again thank today's guest for sharing the story right here on the podcast. Please remember to like, follow, share, and recommend us so that I can continue to bring you high caliber guests sharing their experiences just like we heard today. If your law enforcement agency is interested in training provided by Streetwise 360, or if you know someone that has an interesting law enforcement story to share, please contact me via the website, www.streetwise-360.com, www.streetwise-360.com.